Hello, I'm Anna Shoub from the Hat Junkie in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. I am a hat maker and a knitter and felter, and today I want to share with you a video about felting your knits. So the video that I'm going to share with you is one where I'm felting my hand knit and felted beret. And I have the pattern in the show notes below, available on my website or Ravelry, and I'm going to put it on my Etsy shop as well. They're super cute. It's called my Collette felted beret. Before I forget, if you are looking for me, I keep looking because my cat is back there and sometimes he attacks my feet when I'm making a video. If you are looking for me, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Hat Junkie, and my website is hatjunkie.com. So, I wanted to just talk before I share that video with you. I wanted to just mention, why would you felt your knits by hand? So a lot of people felt their knits in the washing machine, and this can be done, but I don't really recommend it. Well, I should say, if you're happy with that result, then that's great. But what happens when you felt in the washing machine is you don't have any control over the finished product, so the finished result. So the felting can happen in any direction. Some parts can shrink more than the others. It can become over felted where it's just super hard and not malleable anymore. So I like to felt by hand because it gives me all the control of whether I want to make it shrink from side to side or vertically, and I apply the knowledge of being a wet felter into felting by hand, so I'm really using those same techniques. If you look at my felted beret, you will see that you can still see the stitches. So I've knit it reasonably larger, but I'm not felting it to the point where you really don't see the stitches anymore, because at that point it's quite stiff, and I like it when it holds its shape and it has body, but I don't want to take away the beautiful qualities of a knit where it has stretch and give, and is still, you know, malleable. I wouldn't say drape, but you can still play with it. The other thing that happens when you felt in a washing machine is you're going from 0 to 100 in terms of the felting process. So you're not gently building up. So what happens is the fibers become very roughed up, and the hat can become a little too brittle. And when you're doing it by hand, you can maintain the softness of the wool itself. So that is why I am doing this by hand, and I hope you will enjoy the video. The sound is not the best, but you should be able to totally understand and see what I'm doing. And in the patterns, I also am sharing the video instructions for how to make the flowers as well. Okay, hope you enjoy. Thanks. Okay, now that we have finished knitting the hat, we are going to start felting. And the very first step is to take a large pot and fill it with hot water, very hot, as hot as you can, just from the tap. And we're going to be using a little bit of liquid hand soap. Not an antibacterial soap, just unscented natural soap. And we also need a pair of rubber gloves. So in this pot, which is about the size of a soup pot, I have put in super hot tap water, and that's why I'm wearing gloves, just to save my hands. Once it cools down, I often take the gloves off. I added a couple squirts of liquid hand soap, not antibacterial soap, and you can use dish soap in a pinch. Liquid hand soap tends to be more pH neutral, and that's better for the wool. But dish soap will work in a pinch. So what I'm doing is I'm just turning the hat as I need it. It's very much like washing clothing by hand or kneading bread. And when this is over, once I've worked this for about 10 minutes, I'm going to squeeze out about half the water, and then I'm going to be working directly on the table. I just want to show you one part of the hat that I start to work almost immediately, and that's this top little I-cord. Where you did those final decreases, there's likely, unless you pulled super tight, little openings there. And this goes away by felting, by rolling that little I-cord and the top of the hat between your palms. So as I'm moving it, every time I get back to that little spot, I pay particular attention there and roll the little I-cord, and it's going to give you a nice little detail on the top. The other thing you're going to start to notice is all these fibers coming out in the water as you're felting, and that is also very normal. And I just take them, you know, when there's quite a lot of them, and I just put them next to me on the towel, anywhere. I just kind of get rid of them as I'm working. Those are just all the loose fibers coming to the surface. The entire felting process takes me usually between 30 and 40 minutes. And you can stop at any time. You can stop for days if you want. If you just want to do 15 minutes a day, if you feel you've had enough, all you do is just rinse it out so the soap isn't staying in the hat for too long. And when you are ready to start working again, just put it back in hot water with a little bit of soap just to reheat it. It works, it felts better when it's warm. So yeah, you can do this all at once. Sometimes I have a little book stand in front of me and I'll actually read a book as I'm going, or listen to a podcast, or even watch a TV show. So, you know, it does get to be hard work as you go along, but you don't have to do this all at once. So I've been felting in the water for about 10 minutes or so. You can go a little longer. You can actually do the entire hat in the water, but I will explain why I take it out. And now I am going to squeeze out about half the water. Now you'll see there's little bits of grass that are still in the yarn. I just pull them out as I go. I've been doing it the whole time I'm working. I just stop and pull out little bits of hay and grass. It's the charm of working with very minimally processed yarn. Okay, so I just take the hat and squeeze it, but I don't squeeze it dry. And I'm going to put it on the towel next to me, but then I'm actually going to empty out my water for now. I will refill it later. And I'm going to get rid of the towel, and I'm going to be working directly on my wood table. I now squeezed out about half the water, and I'm going to be working with the hat directly on the table and changing up my hand motions as I work. This will help to speed up the felting process. you will see in the hat I have, this is where I repaired that mistake, and I'm just leaving these here for now, and I will cut that off at the end after it's nice and felted. So here is one hand motion. You put your hand over one end of the hat, and with your fingers you roll up the other end, and then just roll through your hand and back like that. And felting happens in the direction of the motion. So if I were to keep doing this, my hat would be felting in this direction all the time. So what I have to do is I have to rotate the hat now and make sure that I am moving equally across around the whole hat. I should mention that if I didn't already, that you do not have to do this all at once. You can take lots of breaks, and you can even do this over several days and just do a few minutes a day. Just rinse out the soap in between each and every time you begin. Soak it in hot water to begin. So I press quite hard. I'm not pressing as hard as I usually do right now because I'm trying to get the camera not to shake. But you would be pressing quite hard. Then go back to kneading again. Another motion is the accordion. Just move your hat in and out, rotate it. And another motion is gently tossing. Another motion is rolling it between your hands. And so this is great for shrinking the head size opening, the head opening here. And it also works on the other side to close up the holes at the top of the hat and to really accentuate this little, I don't know what you call it. It's very pixie-ish to me. It's just a little I-cord. I always love that part of a beret. So keep alternating between those motions and make sure that you are felting evenly around the whole hat. If there's a particular area that you're trying to felt to make smaller, then you just work that part more than any other. So if I really want to shrink my head opening more, I do these kinds of motions around my head opening, or just press it, or even throw it so the head opening is hitting the table. So wherever it's hitting the table, that part's going to be shrinking. In general, you're just doing it very evenly. Now, our goal is to get the circle of the beret to equal 10 inches across in diameter, and to get this opening to be, depending on whether if you're working on a large size, it's going to be 6.5 to 7 inches, and if you're working on a smaller to medium size, you're working anywhere between, I'd say 5.5 or 5 through 6.5. So I would have a tape measure next to you, and you just measure across. So now we are at 11.5 inches. So we have quite a bit of felting to do. And you will really be able to see it felting. I mean, for one, you're going to see that these fibers keep coming off. That is part of the felting process. And the whole hat is going to just get fuzzier and fuzzier and tighter and tighter. That is what's happening while you're felting, is the scales on the wool, so on the strands of yarn, there's little scales, and they start attaching to each other and bonding and becoming tighter and tighter, and that's what makes wool shrink. So it isn't hot water that makes it shrink. That's a misconception, because if you just put it in hot water, it's not going to shrink. You need the agitation. So we have done both. We've really soaked it in hot water, and now we are agitating it. The reason that I don't do this completely in water is that at some point, water actually inhibits, too much water will actually inhibit the felting process. So it's great at the beginning, and then you don't need it as much as you move along. You have been working on the table. You can also be doing this at a kitchen counter, whatever's comfortable for you. You can then soak it again in hot water for a minute and then start working it again. As you get closer to the end, if you're trying to, you've been working and working and it's just kind of stuck, there are two things you can do. One is to just let it rest. As strange as it might sound, the project will really benefit from just resting, from walking away and starting again. The other thing you can do is to run it under the tap, and to go from hot, very hot, and then immediately to very cold and back to very hot. And that is another thing that makes wool felt and shrink, is abrupt changes of temperature. So keep moving like this, keep moving, working your hat, and every once in a while lay it out flat like that and just measure it. Now, you can adjust the head size opening. Like when you like I'm still at 11 inches, but let's say you're getting closer and it's going to be drying. You can actually push the center in and it will dry at wherever you've put it. So you have a little bit of leeway there with your head size opening. Okay, so just keep doing all these motions, rotating, rolling it, really put that hand flat, roll through your hands like that, and the accordion, and tossing. And as the hat starts to shrink, you can get faster and a little more aggressive with your movements, So the faster you go, that will really help. So after it's shrunk a certain amount, it's going to get a little bit harder to keep going. So yeah, speed up your hand motions and keep measuring it every 5 minutes or so to see where you're at, so that you don't go further than you want to go. The hat will look nice at various stages of felting. So sometimes I will leave it so that I'm still seeing the stitches, but it definitely has that nice tight fuzzy quality. And sometimes I will just really, really pound it until you almost don't see the stitches at all. You'll also see that this little seed stitch stripe becomes so muted and very subtle. Something's going on, but you can't quite see it. It's just a little bit of texture. Okay, I'm going to meet you back here once I have reached 10 inches, and you can stop earlier if you really want it to be a bigger beret. That's fine. If you have a medium head size and you want the beret to be bigger, stop around 11 inches, but then just really work that head size opening so that that's not too big. Okay, I'll meet you back here when we've reached those measurements. I got to a point in the felting process where it was getting harder to get smaller. I was working quite hard, so I just filled up my pot with super hot water again and gave it a soak, and that will help it now. And I just wanted to remind you that you can do the same thing. Remember that felting happens in the direction that you're moving it. So now I am just taking in the sides and squishing it towards the center. And you can feel free to come up with your own hand motions too. Once I see the hat is at a point where I'm happy with the size, or I think I'm happy with the size, I like to try it on. But if you try it on sopping wet, you're just going to have water running down your face. So I put the hat in a salad spinner. I press out all the water, I put it in a salad spinner, and you can get really a lot of water out this way. I do it a few times. Then I just go ahead and I try the hat on and see if I like where I'm at. And if I do, I stop there. And if I don't, I keep going a little. I just re-wet the hat then in hot water. You don't need soap at this point. And I continue felting for a little bit, and then I just try it on again. So once you are perfectly happy with the size, you want to make sure all the soap is rinsed out of the hat, and then you're going to put it down flat on a table and shape it. And you want to pay particular attention to the head size opening and kind of pat it back into shape. And remember that the head size opening is actually going to dry a tiny bit tighter than it feels when you have tried it on. So here is my beret so far after I spun all the water out. I think I may actually do that alternating between hot and cold just to get a tiny bit more shrinkage in there. But I like it like this, but I know that I just want it a little wee bit smaller around the head size. So yeah. Okay, I hope you're enjoying your beret so far and liking how it's looking. You can tell just how different this looks from when it was knit. It's now really looks like a piece of felt and not a big goomy piece of knitting, oversized knitting. So I have hit my mark, and the final step in the beret before we get to the flowers is to do a little bit of defuzzing. So, well, first of all, I have these little strands here. I am just going to snip them off. And then I have all this fuzziness around the hat. Now, some fuzziness is wonderful. Too much fuzziness, well, maybe not so wonderful. So I just take the scissors and hold it. I mean, you can rip it, but the scissors does a very nice job. Just hold the scissors sideways to the hat. Obviously, don't cut into the hat. Pull the fuzz away and just snip it off and go around the hat and just give it a little bit of a haircut. One thing you may notice as you wear your hat is that after a while, a few pills will come to the surface. And that is no big deal. You just snip them off the way we're doing right now. That's just loose fibers and it will stop pilling. Yeah, you just every once in a while snip them off. So, okay, and when you're going to leave it flat to dry, you want to just shape your head size opening and measure across -5 inches. That works for my head. That will work for most medium-sized heads, but you can go to 5.5, and if you have a really larger head, go larger. Smaller, go smaller. Okie dokie. So next step is making the flowers. Okay, so here is one of my felted berets that is all finished. This one I felted to 10 inches across, and so if it's 11, it's going to be a little poofier. There are 3 sizes in the pattern, and there was something else I wanted to tell you. Oh yeah, I also have kits available for the wool, which I hand dye, and this beautiful wool felt, which comes from Holland, and it's 100% wool felt, and it's hard to find that, and it's really nice to work with because when you steam it, you can crinkle it and it takes a nice shape. And embroidery floss, and you get your contrast color too. So the kits are available on my website, hatjunkie.com. Okay, thank you for watching, and go forth and felt your knitting.